All right, what's up, guys? It's not the first episode, but it's the first episode of the MasterofOne podcast. I actually did this whole recording 5 seconds ago without realizing that I hadn't hit the record button. So, this is how it's going to start. This is the number one learning podcast in the world. Each episode, I'm going to read a book. And okay, by read a book, I mean listen to an audiobook, which is the same thing because I take notes. And then go through all the cool lessons I learned from the book. On top of that, I'm going to go through all the interesting events in my life that have happened since the last podcast. A little bit about me. I am the Georgia State chess champion, 3-time Georgia State chess champion. I am a professional chess player, and right now my singular goal is to become a grandmaster in chess. That is why the podcast is switching from Master of None to Master of One, because I'm going to master things and then go on to the next thing. So on top of playing chess, I enjoy boxing, doing jiu-jitsu, stand-up comedy, working out, and running a chess business called Wolf Chess. If you have any questions or want to bring anything up on this podcast, please follow me and message me on Instagram at DAARON.3 or email me at DEEPAKA34@gmail.com. So, without further ado, this week's book that I went through is an amazing book, a very famous book called Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. So, let's go ahead and get into it. Alright, guys. So, if you guys want to have a taste for how stupid I can become, when I said my Instagram, I said DEE. It is not EE. I am not Deerin. It's DAARON.3. So that is my Instagram name. All right, so now that we have this cleared up, let me go ahead and get into, honestly, a very amazing book. So, part 1, the Mathew effect. So, it made it seem like the Mathew effect was describing this, but it also made it seem like this is kind of general. But this is honestly, like, so interesting. So, they start out in the book with this idea of all professional hockey players are born. I'm not going to say all, but 40% are born in January and February. And then on top of that, 30% are born in March and April. And then after that, you can do the math, but it tapers off. So the question is, why are so many people born in the first 4 months of the year? And when you actually analyze it and think about it, it's very interesting. So basically, the cutoff for schools in Canada are, I think it's like December or early January. So basically, if you were born early January, February, you are going to be bigger, stronger, and older than your whole competition. And this starts out as a small advantage. It's very minuscule. I'm sure there's some genetic freaks or some big people who are bigger than the rest of the field because they have like a, 10 to 12 month start. But this small advantage turns into more and more and more. And basically what happens is early on, they're encouraged, they're told to do more. They're basically the best of their small group. And this small advantage accumulates more and more and more. So this is actually also seen in the Czech national soccer team. It was something crazy, like 90% of the people were born in January to February. Where it's basically the same idea, it's the same kind of concept, where if you're born early, you have this small advantage, and as you get older and older and older, this small advantage accumulates to a bigger and bigger advantage, where it's almost like, why is everyone on the national team born in the first 2 months of the year? So the idea here is kids who, with advantage, it started out small, were picked, coached, and encouraged until it became a very, very big advantage. So I thought that was a very cool way to start the book. Now let's go to the next part of this. And honestly, like, this part is a huge reason why I have quit and shut down so many things recently in my life. So let's start with this. Achievement is talent plus preparation. So I think this happens with a lot of athletes and with everyone. Everyone thinks that, okay, Michael Jordan was so talented, it didn't matter what he did. LeBron James Messi was so talented, Ronaldo was so talented, that didn't matter what they did. But talent from the books that I've read recently, Outliers and Grit, is overrated. It's heart and work ethic that is I think the number one factor in whether you're going to be successful. And that is why achievement is talent plus preparation. You definitely need talent, but the big thing is preparation. And for anyone who's watched Naruto, who knows who Rock Lee is, that man was zero talent, maybe, 150% preparation, and he beat the most talented. I think it was a tie when he fought Gaara, but he literally took the most talented person to the edge of the extreme just off of preparation. Okay, so this is the next experiment is very interesting. They did this experiment with violinists. I think it's some like boarding school. So basically, everyone who got in was they passed the certain cutoff of how good you are. And what they did after that is they measured who was the best after they got in. And what they found out was if you put in 10,000 hours of work, you were the best. If you put in $8,000, did I say 1,000? I meant 8,000 hours of work, you're good. And if you put 4,000 hours of work, or dollars, depending on what's going on with your financial and family situation, you're okay. And once I listened to this, and honestly, the next couple stories that are going to corroborate this, I really had to question, like, okay, where am I putting all my time? Because there's a huge correlation between time and success. So the first thing with this experiment was, if you're good enough, like there's basically a cutoff that you need to make to become the most elite of not the most elite of the elite, but the most elite of average people. So everyone in this experiment met the cutoff: 10,000 hours, 8,000 hours, 4,000 hours. They were all good enough to be the best of their category. Now, once they met that cutoff, there was a clear indication of if you put 10,000, 8,000, and 4,000 hours, that was different leagues of success. And once I heard that, and you're going to hear this again and again in this next chapter, that's when I was like, okay, the time you spend is very important. Not only the time you spend is important, but if you can spend more time, you can overcome the differences in talent between the highest IQ and the lowest IQ. Because they didn't do a separation based off who was the most talented, who was the least talented. They did a separation on who meets the cutoff to be talented, and then whoever puts in the most work gets the best results. So this is another thing they said in this book that I thought was very interesting. It takes 10 years to be GM. Now, they didn't really break down the details of what kind of 10 years, what kind of this, but they said if you work hard, it takes 10 years to be GM, which is kind of depressing hearing it from someone else, where it's like, I mean, I've been playing chess since I was 5, and I'm 28 years old, and okay, I'm not GM, but I've also been doing this for 20 years, so okay, what's going on? And this is actually a great segue to the next point. Now, I'm not going to say that I'm poor, but a point that the book made was being poor is hard because it takes away your time. And this is going to be a very big recurring theme between schools, talent, and everything else. Like, it's not that being poor is a disadvantage. It's like maybe you get this chip on your shoulder, this drive to be better. But the problem is, if you're poor, you can't afford tournaments. You can't take time off to just study chess because you have to work chess. And okay, this is not just chess, this is swimming, this is fighting, this is everything else. If you are funded, if you don't have to worry about money, you can really focus on becoming better and not have to worry about how do I pay the bills or how do I spend time so I don't have to spend time worrying about money. Now, this is going to be really, really interesting. So this is going to get to Bill Gates, but before it gets to Bill Gates, we have to talk about Michigan as a college. So what made Michigan so big, at least, I don't even know the year, I think it's 70s, 80s, but what made them so big is back in the day, to use a computer, you had to book time, you had to pay for time. It was a whole ordeal, right? It was very difficult. But what made Michigan great is they found a way to share time and it was called like a timeshare. And they actually came up with this cheat code where if you put in some like arbitrary number or some fake number, you could use the computer all day. So basically, in the early days of computer science, of using the computer, some people could use it once a day, once a week, once every couple of days. Other people had the opportunity to use it literally every day, and this gave them a huge competitive advantage. Now, before I get into Bill Gates, I want to talk about the Beatles. So the Beatles, basically, they had this gig in Germany. I think it was Germany, or it was like Sweden, or one of those countries where like drugs are illegal. But basically what they could do is they were allowed to play 8 hours of music per day. And in the beginning it was hard. They had to figure out how to do this. But by the end of playing music at 8 hours a day for like months, they were so fluid, so efficient. They were the best. Like, and it's weird with music where it's like you don't really have a competition. It's like you don't beat the other musicians, you don't beat the other bands. But because they practiced so much, so long, so hard, so many hours, they just had a huge competitive advantage over everyone else. Now let me tie this back into Bill Gates. So Bill Gates started coding in 8th grade. So something that was really helpful or special for him was he was in this like computer science club, and they had funding from the mothers at the very nice computer science club where they could use basically computers all day. So now he's starting to get that competitive advantage. Next, they had this company that needed someone to help them with payroll through computer science. Boom, Bill Gates locked in. They did that. Now, Bill Gates dropped out sophomore year of college to fully pursue computer science. Now, some people would say that by his sophomore year, he had no experience. He was like, dude, he's just a second year of college. How could he drop out of school? But because of the fact that he had started coding and honestly like making applications and doing things for legit companies while he was in high school, by his second year of college, he already had 7 to 8 years of real work experience under his belt, which is why he could drop out. He's like the Beatles. He had put in so much work and time that by the time things got serious, he was ready to make things happen. Now, this is also something that's very interesting. Like, honestly, super interesting. So, of all the billionaires in, I think it was in the early years, 20% of the richest people were born in a 9-year span in America. Now, 20% is not it's not 90%, it's not 80%. But if you think about it with like numbers and statistics, 20% is a big chunk. So what it was like Andrew Carnegie, Rockefeller, all these guys, they were born at the right time where the market was changing, and they weren't too late to the party where it wasn't the market was at the end of changing. It was like the forefront of changing, and they all had the means to make things happen. They had the time frame to really make things happen. So I think this whole time thing, this whole like 10,000 hours, it's not just 10,000 hours. It's really just being ahead of the curve before there's a curve, which is, I think, a big portion to why I've cut out a lot of things. So once again, I'm probably going to get to the cut out things at the end, but you're going to see a big shift in the way that I act and the way I talk. Okay, part 3, they had this thing called the Ravens test where 48 questions got progressively harder and harder. Basically, there was some genius who it didn't matter. He just took it and he just killed the test. But the other very interesting thing that I kind of pulled away from this is IQ is more of a cutoff. So they were talking a lot about IQs and who's smart and who's genius, and they were saying that if you are basically from 120 to 120 plus, so let's say like you were 121 and someone's 150. Honestly, it doesn't matter. As long as you are smart enough to not be stupid is almost the way to put it. Like, you got what you need. Because there are a lot of problems of being too smart. So, like, we're seeing this a lot throughout the book. Cutoffs are very important. The smartest, richest people are never the smartest people. They are just smart enough, and they use their opportunity and time more wisely, which I think is a very hopeful and good thing to keep in mind. Now, this is honestly part 4 is what I thought was so fascinating, because I came from the opposite school of thought that the book describes. Okay, so what the book says is richer kids have more entitlement, which when you hear that immediately you're just like, wow, what a terrible person, what an annoying person. Like, of course richer kids are more entitled, like they're terrible human beings. But, and this is someone has come from maybe not the richest or the poorest upbringing, but more of a modest upbringing, okay? So richer kids are more entitled, which means they ask and prioritize what they want. They're legit businessmen when they come to confrontation. They're like, well, this is what I'm trying to do. This is this, and this. And people who come off from a lower background, a less affluent background, are exact opposite. They're very polite. They're always like, what can I do for you? Please do your thing. I'm not going to question you. This is like very, very rude of me to ask of you things. And what the book said, which I thought was fascinating, was the entitlement aspect is not a bad thing. And as I've gotten older and lived and been through more life experiences, I've realized like standing up for yourself, asking things that matter to you are not a bad thing all the time. Like, of course, you don't want to be rude or a bad person and just be like, well, I'm Justin Bieber, so like you must give me this, you know? But at the same time, you can't just be the meek, tentative person who's just like, yes, sir, no, sir, I don't believe so, sir. I know you're wrong, sir, but I'm going to do what you say, sir. Like, there is a level of respectability and importance to being able to stand up for yourself or speak up for yourself, even if the challenging force is a side of authority. So, I mean, very interesting from someone who's come up from with an opposite upbringing, and I kind of see it now. And you're gonna hear about this later in the podcast. But like me trying to raise this voice and speak this voice that I've never had, it comes with some growing pains for sure. So that is kind of the difference between rich and poor kids. Now, another thing that I think is also very important that I should talk about, and it's going to come up later, between rich and poor kids, is when you have a rich, well-off, monetarily well-off family background, your in-between time, your dead time, your like after-school time, you're getting the best resources, the best help. You're getting like top of the quality kind of food, top of the quality kind of knowledge. And that is another thing that we're going to see later on that is very, very important and makes a huge distinction between the well-off and the non-well-off. Okay, so let's go to part 5. So this is actually another very interesting. Rags to riches are not random. Like, if you look at the rags to riches stories, you're going to see a common theme. You're basically going to see people who did not accept the situation that they're in, and they basically use their mind and imagination to shape the future. They basically lived with a vision in mind. They basically lived with like, this is my eventual plan, and I will sacrifice everything for this plan. Like a beautiful, beautiful quote that I heard recently off one of the other books I'm reading is, happiness is sacrificing what you want right now for what you want eventually. And you're going to see this with all the rags to riches stories. Like, these guys lived purposefully, and that is why they got to where they wanted to go. Okay, so now part 6 is another interesting part. So legacy and job description almost defined how you act. So this is something that was very interesting. Best way to put this is, let's go back to the Civil War and let's go to North versus South. Okay, so the people in the South, they had the most murders by people who knew each other. It was all about honor. A job like this is herdsman. It's a big honor kind of job. Like, if you don't respect a herdsman, they kind of have to kill you. The South is like this too, like with the plantations or with like big business. Like, it was very about honor. And they did this experiment where they would have guys from the south, guys from the north. And they would have this one guy, this instigator. Basically, this guy was an asshole. He was trying to piss you off. He was trying to be mean to you, try to say something to you, try to tick you off. And what they saw was when he did this to people from the north, they would just avoid confrontation. They were trying to skirt to the right, to the left, and just avoid what was happening. But if you did this to people in the south, it was very confrontational, and you actually saw legit spikes in cortisol and testosterone, because in the south it's a big honor type of community. In the north, it's a very big, I'm not gonna say honor, but like not honor type of community, where they were just like, hey, we are artists, we're creatives, we try to avoid this kind of stuff. Like, we don't want to fight. Now, as an inference or an assumption, like, is this good or bad? I don't know. Like, I think there's merit to being respectful, to having honor, but also there's also merit for not being so overly overtaken by the emotions running, by the problems that are facing you. But it is a very interesting concept, and this is, I think, the theme of the chapter is like, your society will tell you a lot about the type of person. It was very clear that people from the south had this type of feeling, and it was very clear that people from the north had this type of feeling. So I think that was a very interesting way to look at the culture and how it affected the people who made decisions. All right, so let me go ahead and keep going with Outliers. The next chapter is very interesting. It's about ethnic theory, which kind of has to do with having a lot of money versus having not so much money, and how we talked about, like, if you have less money, you're more respectable of order and command and authority. And when you have money, when you're rich, or when you're literally American, you just kind of question authority. So the first thing that they said was most plane crashes take about 7 errors. And this actually hits home to me. Not that I've ever been in a plane crash, but when it comes to chess games, generally you're not lost in one move. If you make one mistake, yeah, it can be kind of fatal, it can be kind of crucial, but it is an accumulation of mistakes that make the game go from okay to just horrendous, you know? And it's very interesting that this happened in plane crashes too. So basically what happens, and this is actually very interesting on top, is most plane crashes occur when the lead pilot is actually flying the plane, which is very interesting. If the co-pilot, the second in command, is flying the plane, there are less plane crashes. So why is that? So the reason why is when the commentator or the person that's trying to fix the situation is the person with more power, the first flyer, the person in command, will respect and will listen better. But when the captain of the plane, when the main flyer is flying, the second in command will be more reluctant to make suggestions or try to say something. And this is, honestly, once again, this happens in chess, where it's like when you're sure of something, you're going to make way more mistakes and be in a worse predicament than when you're almost not sure of something. When you're not sure of something, you're more tentative, you're more questioning, and you're more willing to listen. But I've had a lot of chess games where I'm just like, this is what I want to do. And then I do this and I'm just losing, you know? So that's a very, very, very interesting thing that I've seen. And kind of the solution to this is you need to speak up. So when you have this voice that's questioning and doubting, it's not like you shut it out. Because sometimes, I mean, every once in a while, this stupid voice is actually the voice that needs to not be heard. But the voice that questions what's going on needs to have enough market share where you have to take into account. Otherwise, if you just follow blindly to what you want to do and what you want to say, this is how you get in trouble. So this is actually something that makes Americans almost advantageous. So this is the idea of low power distance. So in certain cultures, in this book, they use the idea of Columbia. Like, if you are a subordinate, if you talk to your commander, the person in charge, You say yes, sir. You say yes, ma'am. You just very politely never disagree. And this is actually what happened in this one plane crash where this guy was like, hey, we're running out of fuel. And then I think they were actually talking to New York, the JFK commanders, and they were just like, well, if he thought he was running out of fuel and it was a big problem, he would have spoke up more. And they were like, all right, cool. And he was like, nah, dude, we're running out of fuel. And then they were like, okay, once again, if he was more serious about it, he would have said something. And they were like, cool, let me know what's up. And then the guy was literally just like, all right, well, I guess we're just going to die. And that's kind of what happened in this accident, unfortunately, where they just didn't know what to do. And this is pretty much what happened. They were just like, I mean, we tried. We told them we're going to run out of fuel. And the people were just like, nah, dude, if they were going to run out of fuel, they'd say they're going to run out of fuel. So this is why Americans actually are very good at this, where it's like, we will speak up for anything that happens. We won't just take things lying down. We are very questioning of power, which I think, honestly, is a good thing. Okay, so the next thing we're going to talk about is about Asian people in math, which I think is fascinating. So let's take a break and go to the next one. All right, so rounding out Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. Part 8 was honestly so interesting. Blew my mind. I was like, it all makes sense now. So what he's trying to hypothesize is, why are Asian people better at math? And there's actually a very logical and interesting explanation for why Asian people are better at math. So basically, the English language is kind of complicated. Like, we don't use the metric system. You have 11, 12, 13. Then 11, 12. Then we have 13, 14, 15, 16. And it's like, some numbers sound like they should be. Some don't sound like they should be. It's confusing, right? But Asian people, their language makes it very easy and standard for math. It's like 15 is just 10 and 5. 37 is just 30 and 7. Like, it flows very naturally. And that is why he's proposing the hypothesis that Chinese people are better at math because their language encourages it. And now, if we go one step further, they talk about rice farming as opposed to commercialism or capitalism in America. So rice farming is very interesting because basically what they do, it's not too easy, it's rewarding, and if you get more work done, then you get paid more. So he did an analysis of what countries rice farm the most, and it was China, Japan, Korea, basically all the big Asian countries, which makes it very evident that hard work is rewarded in these cultures. So already math is more intuitive, more natural, and on top of that, in their cultures, the big industry base is rewarding hard work and labor. So this kind of leads to the point that Chinese people or Asian people are better at math because their culture is much more centered toward it, which I think makes a lot of sense, and it's something that I didn't know my whole life, you know? Okay, so now next thing, before we close out Outliers, and honestly just a very amazing, very unique book. Summer vacation is actually bad for kids. So the reason that summer vacation is bad for kids is there is not really a discrepancy between poor kids and rich kids during the school year. For the most part, and actually I think what the book said was poor kids did better during the school year than richer kids. But over the summer, poor kids made no gains. They basically did not partake in any endeavors or activities that would help improve their learning throughout the summer. So the deduction there was, over the summer, poor kids had a huge disadvantage. They would almost deteriorate over the summer. Whereas rich kids had resources. They had money, they had books, they had camps, they had all these resources. So over the summer, there was a huge increase in intellect and IQ and productivity but amongst well-off students, and there's a huge drop-off within students who are not as well-off. So there was this school in New York that actually what made them the best at math, at the best at like dealing with different things, was they just didn't take summer break. And as frustrating as it was for some of the kids, it was the sole explanation for why, no matter your race, no matter your background, you would be good at math by the end of high school. And that's very interesting. So kind of the way he sums this up, and one more point I want to make, is being a minority is advantageous for comedians. Because for the most part, you have to observe the difference in society, but you're not curbed for what you say. Like well-off white people, they can't really say things because then they get ridiculed or laughed at and like, hey, how could you say this? But if you're a minority, for the most part, you don't really say anything, but you're very observant of what's going on, which is maybe why I like comedy so much. So that will sum up the great book, Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. I'm super happy I read this book, and it's led to a lot of big decisions in my life that I'm going to get to in a sec, but that is going to sum up the reading portion of the MasterofOne podcast. All right, so this is the second half of the podcast. This is going to be just things I learned throughout the week that honestly are pretty interesting. So the first thing I want to talk about is when you need to hear something, is that when someone tells you. And the way I want to describe that, and I think first let me answer what I think this means, or like, I think when you want to hear something, that's when you start hearing it. Because I feel like people have been telling me things, the same things in cycles throughout my life, but when you want to hear something, that's when you start listening for it. So like I would have been thinking like, should I just focus on chess and not do other things? And that's when my student Greg recommended me I read this book, Grit, and then Outliers. And through reading Grit and Outliers, I've really learned that if you want to be successful, you got to focus on one thing. Now I've had people tell me this before in my life, but I didn't really want to hear it. And I think that's why now that Greg has told me this, I've really been practicing it. And the way I wanted to describe this is the car, like this, I don't know if there's a name for it, but basically it's a car phenomenon. Ever since my friend bought a Tesla, and like this certain brand of Teslas, I see it everywhere. But before, I'm sure I saw it everywhere, but it didn't mean anything to me because it was just a random car. Like the same thing, if I see the car that I drive, Nissan something, yeah, Nissan something. Now that I have it, I see it more often. I remember there was a time where I really wanted to drive a red Mustang, and that was on my mind. And I remember I would see red Mustangs like all the time. But now that it's off my mind, I see it less. So you can try this out. Whatever car you have on your mind, I'm going to go, okay, if you have like a super fancy car, it's not going to be as common. But if you have a pretty reasonably bought car in mind, just think about it. And I have a feeling that you're going to just see it more as you, it's also you have to drive a lot, but you're going to see it more as you're driving. Okay, so now another thing, and this kind of goes with this too, is theme of the day. There's been a couple of days this week where something didn't just happen once, it happened multiple times. The first example of that is people buying houses. I remember I woke up, it might have been last Monday, and my friend was like, hey, we're buying a house. The same day, my uncle was like, hey, we're buying a house. Later that night, my friend was like, hey, I just bought a house. So I don't know if it's the exact same thing. It's just like, I don't really believe in coincidences. And that is just so many coincidences happening at the same time. I mean, I don't think I'm going to buy a house anytime soon. But maybe it's a sign that all my friends are kind of moving up and making progress or something. Now, okay, another thing is giving up the past. Like, and this kind of goes with girls with family. But basically, I don't think it's a good idea to talk to girls from the past. I don't know. And okay, it's not just girls from the past. It's like people from the past who haven't really grown, who are the same people. And it's not a thing against them. It's just they're going to look at you the way that you were. And I think there's going to be two big reactions that you see. Either they're going to treat you the same way that you were, or they're not going to believe, or they're not going to want to talk to the new person that you are. And this is why I think it's very important for everyone to grow. Because if you grow, then you're happy for other people growing or changing, and then you accept it. But if you don't grow, and this is actually something that I've been reading that in the next book that I'm going to talk about, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, but there's something called circles of influence and circles of concern. If you grow, if you control what you can control, your circle of influence grows. But if you don't grow, your circle of concern keeps growing. And that's what I think happens with people who don't change. They just have more things to worry about instead of more things to improve. And I think that is what happens when you talk to people from the past. All that's been happening with them is their circle of concern has been growing, and then it becomes harder for them to accept you if you have changed a lot. Like I would say myself, not saying good or bad, or actually definitely saying good, but like not trying to brag or anything, but I have had a lot of growth in the last year, 2 years, 3 years. Actually, the best way to put it, and this is also something that I heard from one of the books, is see how you've changed in the last 10 years. Because 1, 2 years, like there's a lot of volatility up and down, but 10 years, really try to think, okay, what has changed in the last 10 years? And oh my God, like I was literally went from a kid to a young man in the last 10 years. Probably in the last year itself, I think I've really went from a kid to a young man. But if you want to compare it to 10 years ago, I think it's very clear the difference that has kind of happened. So that's why I don't really like talking to people from the past unless they've changed and grown. So that's going to be something that a pattern that I've seen. I'm going to really try to avoid when it comes to contact with certain people. If I think you're the same, it's just going to be dissonance. It's not going to fit. And when I was younger, I would just thought, okay, people from the past, definitely hit them up, do your thing. But now I've just seen this pattern a couple of times where it's like it's not worth it. Another theme that's really been happening is the girls from the past have their excuses are always like, at least recently, have been, I'm with my family, I'm doing something family, which is interesting because like it's all of them right now. And also I've got a lot of excuses or a lot of like cancellations from girls or people from the past or just things, and family is for the first time really coming up more. And ironically, like I have to go cancel a bunch of things for my family because my sister's graduating in a week. And I'm going to do it for my sister because she's graduating, but I'm not a huge fan of it because this is like a big month for me when it comes to, I have my first major tournament in a while, and I'm really trying to grind and be ready for it, prepare for it. So it's just ironic, and maybe it's like, should I be willing to cancel more for my family? It's like almost like something to think about that I'm already thinking about and has been brought to the surface of my mind. If that makes any sense whatsoever, which I'm not sure it does. Okay, another one that, another theme of the day that is going to make way more sense than the last two I was talking about is formula for attacking and openings. So in chess, there's a formula. There's a formula for if you want to know, should I attack my opponent? Should I go for the finish? So that formula is +2. If you are +2, attackers versus defenders. If you are +2 on time. Another thing that you have to factor in the +2 is there a huge weakness in their position? If there is, that counts as 1 or maybe even 2, depending on how big of a weakness it is in their position. So it's been again and again and again and again like this. I mean, this past 3 days, I've taught about 20 chess lessons, and a lot of them I'd have to say the same thing, and hopefully I don't have to keep saying the same thing. But we've been going over the formula for attack. Another one is openings. I remember there was a day that 2 kids, or maybe even 3, but they kept having the same Italian structure that they needed help with. And I was like, is this a coincidence or like what's going on? Like I literally taught this lesson 5 or like 2 hours ago, and now I'm teaching the same one. So I think endgames too has also been a very big thing. Actually, let me talk about this real quick. Why are endgames such an advantage? Actually, let me add this too. It's okay. So the way I try to think about endgames, it's basically like jiu-jitsu and wrestling in fighting is like endgames and trading pieces in chess. Now, probably the most successful style of fighting is Dagestani wrestlers. we're not going to say they're the best, but they have the most overall success for sure. Maybe at the top, they only really have Khabib, Chimaev, but if you look at the lower levels, the rankings, like these guys are coming up very fast and very efficiently. And the reason why is if you can take someone down, you can control them, you cannot get hit, and you have a higher chance of winning and also a much lower chance of losing. Because even if you lose, it's going to be a decision. It's never going to be a knockout. You're never going to feel like, wow, I just got destroyed. Like most of the time, worst case, it's like, wow, I should have won, and these are terrible judges. Great thing about chess is there's no judges. It's like you're going to draw or you're going to win or you're going to lose too. But like it's in your hands. And this is why I believe in teaching good endgames and being able to trade pieces when you're winning. This is something I will harp again and again. If you're winning, please trade and simplify. Like if you see a fighter and he is winning on the cards, let's say he's up 2 rounds, all he has to do is not get knocked out the last round and he's going to win because it judges. And this is actually, I think, similar with chess. If you keep pieces on the board, if you keep it risky, you can get quote unquote knocked out in chess. Something crazy can happen. There can be tactics. But if you just keep trading and simplifying, life is going to be easy. You're going to win with no threat of knockout. So this is why I say trade and simplify, and this is why I compare this style to Dagestani wrestling. Once you're winning, just take him to the ground, and if you submit him, great. You can like remember on the ground or in endgames, you can have some really cool finishes, some really nice, even checkmate sometimes too. But it's simple. You just push your pawns and you're gonna win. Like once you get to a winning endgame. So that has also been a huge thing that I've been pressing forward this past 3 days of teaching chess. Okay, so now let me get up to the next thing that I've really learned. So giving up things, and this is really like just tying into the last thing I said. The definition of happiness that I got recently from not this book but another book. Happiness is giving up what you want now for what you want eventually. And that is right now, I want to be Grandmaster. Or I guess not right now, but eventually or like as soon as possible, I want to be Grandmaster. But what do I want to do right now? I want to do jiu-jitsu. I want to do boxing. I want to do stand-up comedy. I want to do powerlifting. I want to do all these things. So I need to give up the things that make me happy now for what I want eventually. And really my big goal, my first big goal right now is making Grandmaster by the end of the summer. So with that in mind, I have to live a life that lines up with that goal. So even though I want to do these different things, first I need to give it up so that I can get Grandmaster. Then I will go on to the next thing. Now this is something that I think is very true. For me to make Grandmaster by the end of the summer is impossible if I do not sacrifice these other things. If I do not outwork my competition and put in more hours. Just like from Outliers, the violinists who put in the most time were the most successful. So I need to catch up to these guys or overtake these guys with the hours I put in. I can only do that if I give up these other things, which I think is why I've been very listening to people telling me to sacrifice other things now for happiness then. So now, okay, the next thing that goes with this, breaking cycles. Because when you've been doing something for a very long time, it's hard to break the cycle. How do we do that? And this is something that I've been really getting from the book I've been reading recently, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Okay, so use different language. If you just tell yourself, I always lose on time, you're absolving yourself of the is the credit that the word I'm using for? Of the responsibility of the mistake. You're just saying, well, next time I'll try to play faster. And this is something that I've actually been harping on in the last couple podcasts that really goes along with this. Be specific. Why are you losing on time? Fix that. Or let's say like, I just don't see tactics. Oh, I just always lose. So this is, what did he say was the word for this? This is reactive people versus proactive people. If you're just a reactive person, you're just reacting to things that are happening. It's out of your control. It's out of your power. But if you are proactive, you are attacking the weaknesses. You're trying to figure out ways to solve the problem instead of just saying, well, it's a problem that I'm going to always have. I'm never going to get rid of it. And this is why using language is so important. So let me give you an example. Let me try to lead by example and tell you something that I have been struggling with in chess. So when I play Blitz, I always lose on time. It is almost guaranteed. And I have like winning positions. I'm like up 2 queens and the guy's got a pawn left and I lose on time. So 2 things that I can do to stop this. 1, get faster with the mouse. Now, there are ways to practice this, but there's a much easier way to fix my problem. And it's stop playing Blitz while watching basketball. Stop playing Blitz while watching some MMA news. Stop playing Blitz while eating food or something. If I'm going to play Blitz, focus on it, give it your full attention, and that's going to fix things way easier than just working hard with the mouse and like doing mouse warm-ups, right? And this probably is true for a lot of people in chess. If you are constantly getting low on time, if you are constantly flagging, think about why this is happening. Are you getting mental blocks? Or what I think the solution or the diagnosis is you're thinking about other things during the game a lot. Like you're thinking about what your wife wants, what food you're gonna have for dinner, what your kid said the other day. Like these are all things that you're thinking about during your game. Like I think, okay, the best way to play chess is imagine you had one more day with someone you loved. What would you do? Would you just sit around and be sad that day? Would you be talking to your other friends and texting people and being like, let's do this, let's do this? Or, and if you truly love someone, I would be maximizing every single second that I have with this person. And that, I think, is the way you should play chess. Or this is how you should do art. This is how you should do anything that takes your creativity and your time. Give it 100. I'm not gonna say 110%. I'm actually serious. Like I give it 100% of what you have. Because like there's one girl that if I had one extra day with, I would literally cut out every single thing possible. I would wake up early, no problem, and I would just have the best day ever. And that, I think, is the way you should play chess and the way you should just do the things that you do. Like, it's hard to do it all the time for everything, but if you want to enjoy life, if you want to enjoy a hike, if you want to enjoy a movie, cut everything else out and focus on that. And you'll see like everything will be more efficient, better in general. So that is my long story for how I'm trying to break the cycle of Blitz and also how I'm trying to break the cycle of being low on time. It's okay. Now another outside of chess, how you describe yourself is literally who you are going to become. If you tell yourself, okay, I remember when I was a kid and people asked like, or girls were like, blah blah blah, I'd be like, yeah, I'm kind of a piece of shit. Like I'm not a nice person. Like I just kind of do whatever. And I mean, it kind of described the actions and decisions I would make when I was younger. Now, if you ask me like what kind of person you are, I really believe that I work hard and I try to listen and understand everything. Like I try to take things slow and try to think, okay, what is really going on here? And when I say I work hard, like I work hard. Like I'm literally waking up doing chess all day. Like Monday is my day off, and this is when I'm recording this podcast. At least the second part of it. And then what am I going to do after I finish this? Probably go for a run and then study chess and listen to this book. Like I literally work 8 days a week, and it's because I love what I do. That is why I like to say that I work hard, because I'm also like living the dream. And man, like after making Grandmaster, like dang, that's going to be like, now I'm free to live the other dreams that I want. But right now I understand that to live my other dreams, I must finish this dream first. And that has been, I think, a big thing for me. So, I mean, okay, I'm going to give you examples of other people. So I hear people describe themselves as like, well, I'm just going to lose today. If you say that, you're probably going to lose today. And I know you don't want to have high expectations, because then you get your heart broken when you don't get them. But that probably means you don't work hard. If you don't work hard, you're not going to have high expectations. Like I do see this with my students. When they are working hard, when they're putting in their effort, when they're playing a lot of games, they're asking me, when is the next tournament? When is the next tournament? I want to play. When they're slacking off, when they're doing whatever, they're just like, no, I can't play. I'm going to lose. Like, why would I play? I'm scared of playing. Playing is hard. So really try to break down what is happening. Let me see. What's another one that I see? Okay, so like this is one that the guy said he hears a lot and he does a lot of marriage counseling. But people say like, my marriage is just not working. I just don't feel it anymore. I'm not in love. And then what he tells them to do is just be in love. Just enjoy the other person. Sacrifice for the other person. Do things with the other person. A lot of it is just a choice. And I think like a lot of people are scared of getting rejected, or scared of doing this, or scared of this. And okay, this is actually another thing that I've heard a lot from multiple people. They've told me I'm scared of failing. And at first I was like, no, this doesn't make sense. All right, let me just finish the marriage thing. I'll come back to this. But yeah, so basically, if you're having trouble with your marriage, spend time with the other person. Do what what made you happy, and do new things too. If you don't grow, there will be bigger circles of concern instead of circles of influence. Another thing that probably isn't, like, when you're not in love with the other person, get in shape, get sexy bodies. Like, when I'm in a relationship, we are hooking up like literally all the time. Like, and I have a feeling that people who are in bad marriages are never hooking up. I'm trying to keep it a little PG here because I know there's some kids that listen. But like, if you're good looking, if you have a good body, if you are good at what you do, like, girls want to hook up more than guys do. They're like, I can't wait for it. Can we do it again? Can we do it again? Can we do it again? So like, if you want to fix your marriage, you want to fix your relationship, fix yourself. And a lot of times, like, do it together with the other person. That is the whole idea of a relationship. We're going to grow and make each other better. Don't be babysitting. Don't be dependent on the other person. Be partners. Like Jaylen Brown or Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. This is my go-to 1-2 punch. You got to be like those guys. Those guys, like, when they walk in the building, the other team is like, oh man, here we go. Hopefully they don't each put up 30 points. Another one, Klay Thompson and Steph Curry. Hopefully they ain't putting up a bunch of points. Like, we can just do our best. That's how it should be when you and your girl walk in. Okay. So, now back to afraid of failing. I think why I was doing so many different things was I was kind of stuck in chess and I wanted to grow. But also, like, now I could do other things and get happiness from them if I was stuck in one. But now that I've learned everything from the other things that honestly I do love and I want to come back to, I'm ready to really commit to chess and get my goals. So that is my afraid to failing and how you break cycles. Okay, so now a couple more things that honestly this next one is hilarious. So there's this guy who does this show, right? And basically the show is every Monday, and if he hits me up a week before saying like, hey, you're going to be on the show, or you want to be on the show this week, I'll be like, yeah, cool, let's do it. But when he hits me up 15 minutes before, 30 minutes before, in the past, I was like, okay, cool, I'll do it. But now, like, it's like 2 hours of my life. I can't just give up 2 hours of my life. Like, I plan my days pretty much the whole day before everything happens. And when I don't really have 2 hours to just spare here, because then I have to sacrifice all these other things. So I really try to say respectfully, hey, if you give me advance notice, then I can join the show and help you with it. But if you hit me up last minute, then it's not gonna happen. I just can't do it. I plan my whole days and I have a lot of things that I have to get done. I'm a businessman. And his response was like, this is not how it works. Next time I hit you up last minute, if you want to be on the show, be on the show. And I was like, I didn't respond because I could tell the guy was coming out guns a-blazing. But it's like, did you listen to anything I said? I just like, and I think it's a fair thing to say. Like, respect my time. My time is valuable. Don't hit me up last minute. And like, if you really want me on the show, then plan ahead for it. And when he said, if next time I'm going to hit you up last minute, hopefully you say yes then, like, I'm going to say no. I made my stance very clear. I was respectful. I said respect my time, and that's just how it's going to be. So this has been a big thing for me, saying no to other people, and just trying to like stand up for what I believe in. And sometimes I will admit it comes off maybe a little bit like of an overcorrection. I'm not going to say maybe even aggressive. Maybe it comes off aggressive. I remember 2 girls that I was talking to this past week. One was kept nagging me, and I was like, get off my ass. And apparently that was way too much for her to handle. And she was like, I can't believe you said that to me. Oh my God. And okay, maybe it's a little too much, but all right, relax. Like, it's not that bad. Now, another one, basically wasted my time in terms of we scheduled something and then all of a sudden something came up and I was like, don't waste my time. And that was a whole nother thing. But I think it's important, and sometimes I feel bad, but I'm working a new muscle, and basically, like, I'm gonna be sore, and I'm not gonna be able to lift the weight sometimes, but I choose to work it out, and that is the muscle of standing up for yourself, speaking up for yourself, and not getting pushed over, or not compromising your values for something that you don't want to. So, time is important. I'm gonna say that. Now, okay, another thing that I'm trying to work on this week is being punctual. I think this is also something that's very important and very respectful. And what makes this hard is having friends. I'll be honest. Like, when I'm hanging out with my friends, like, I want to hang out with my friends. Like, we're having a good time, we're talking, we're doing something, we're doing this. But if I schedule something for this time, then I have to say, hey, it's this time, I have to go. Like, if I'm trying to be somewhere at 5:30 and I'm hanging out with my friend, I have to tell him, hey, it's going to take me 30 minutes to get there. We're going to cut out at 4:45. Now, another thing is don't cut it close, because there's always this gray area of 5 minutes where you're saying, bye, I got to see you later. I'm going to walk you out, like all this kind of stuff. And then you're not going to be punctual. So just know yourself, know what's going to happen, and give yourself some leeway to be late, or to not to be late, but to know that it's going to take some extra time. That way, worst case, you show up on time. Best case or normal case, you're going to just show up early, which I think is very important. Okay, so another thing that I've seen with chess players is the gambit method. So I had this one student who was like, he used the England gambit against this 1500 and he won. And then after using it, he got to like 50. He got to, so it was like his first tournament. He got to 1500, and the kid was like, and then he just lost all his games after. And that's when I wanted to tell him this. I did tell him this, and then there was a great post by Avatek, this Avatek Gregorian, this grandmaster, who talked about this phenomenon. But basically, if you go for gambits, if you just play gambits, there are some gambits that are more sound. But if you go for the cheapo gambits, where either they work or you're just worse, short term, it could be cool, it could be fun, it'll be what you're looking for. But long term, it ain't gonna work. And at some point, people are gonna figure you out, and now you're never gonna win. And like this is fair in chess as well as it is in life. Like if you are a gambit type of person, if you are always sacrificing long term for short term, people will figure you out. They'll see like, all right, this guy is always this. He's always doing this. Like this is what is going to happen. And you're also gonna have the same thing where you're gonna be like, man, I always try to go out Friday night and Saturday night. And then I don't understand why, like, Saturday morning, like, I can't wake up. Why am I canceling things Sunday afternoon? Because I went to bed so late. Like, this is living short-term versus living long-term. This is living the gambit method, the gambit lifestyle, which every once in a while, you can leverage long-term and have good short-term results. But it should be more of a change-up thing than more of a lifestyle. And I actually have friends like this who play chess, and they're always playing gambit this, gambit that, doing this. And I don't want to call anyone out, but if you look at their character, it's not the best, because they're always living like a gambit. Another thing that you'll see in chess a lot is people who literally play the same damn opening for like 100 years. If you do it for 100 years, you better know it really well, like very well, to the sharpest level. If I see you play an opening and I know that you don't have understanding of it, and I know you've been playing it for 10 years, you got to fix something. Because, like, I don't even play that opening most of the time, but somehow I know it better. No, okay, obviously I study chess and do chess all the time, but if you've been doing something for 10 years, and I've been looking at something for a month or a year, I should not know it better than you. You need to make a change. You need to grow as a person, as a chess player. If you grow as a chess player, you'll grow as a person. If you grow as a person, you will want to grow as a chess player. There's a very natural hand-in-hand kind of dynamic that you're going to see. Okay, so that's the gambit method. So tournament storylines I think is really interesting. So basically I run tournaments 2 days a week and once a month. I'm trying to use this UFC model that I think I described in another podcast, but it's very interesting because like I know all the people participating, and then they're all kind of have their own story, their own kind of like uh their own character. It's like one guy is like trying to break out of this funk that he's in. One guy is the new guy who's doing really well. The other guy is like the kind of the old veteran who's trying to, who likes to play chess but also has his goals. One guy is the ambitious dude who's like, I need to make 2200, like this is my goal. It's just something that I think is very interesting, and honestly is very hard for me, because when I was younger, I would really try to get attached to these people and their goals, and it would hurt so much when they would not get it, or when they would make a huge mistake, and I'm just like, dude, just trade the queens, or like, dude, how are you not finding this tactic? Like, it's almost like they would be like, I don't understand what's happening, and I want to yell at them because I'm like, dude, I can see it. Like, you're so close, just finish it off. So like, as a tournament director and as someone who's getting older, like I really try to stay unbiased and just not root for anyone. Like, yeah, I kind of root for people, but it's just hard when you know how much they want it and either they don't get it or they get so close. So I mean, of course I root for my students, I root for my friends, but I really try not to get too invested in anything, because it takes energy and effort, and it hurts when it doesn't happen. And you'll see, like, maybe it's about 50-50, or maybe it's even worse than that. Maybe it's like 30% of people get their goal, 70% kind of just hang around and do the thing. And then that's why I really, like, I just try to encourage people, not in like you can do it, like you're gonna get your goal, to encourage people to learn, to please, like, I'm begging you, practice, get better, get a coach, read books. Like, you will get better this way. This is how you guarantee that you'll get your goals. But if you just keep throwing yourself at it and not changing anything, I don't think anything's gonna change. And I mean, I'm really speaking from experience here. Like, I just had to try to, like, today's gonna be the day. Today I'm gonna do better. Like, I'm ready for this. But I didn't really practice and do my thing. And then sometimes I have a good tournament. Sometimes I have a terrible tournament. But now that I'm working hard and practicing, I can guarantee that I will have a good tournament, or at least not a bad one. Like, it's almost impossible, to knock on wood, for me to have a bad tournament right now with how much I'm working. I mean, of course, things can happen, and I have to accept whatever I can't accept. But control what you can. Your circle of influence is way more important than your circle of concern. Control that influence by actually, whatever you can control and get better, do that. And I feel like I've been echoing now for a second, so let's move on to the next thing. Yeah, letting go of the past. I think this kind of deals with people, and I talked about it a little bit earlier, but everything in the past I'm really learning, like even the good things. I try to learn from them. You can, like, what I try to do is get tattoos to commemorate or celebrate the accomplishments of what I did, but you got to move forward, and this is something that I think is hard for me. But the second I can do this, I think I can start living in the moment, living in the future. So I think that's what I'm going to try to do. And if the past comes and finds me, I'll give it a chance. I'll listen. I'll always listen. I'll always, to whoever wants to say something, whoever wants to suggest something, I will listen. But I am in control of my mind and my decisions, and after listening, then I will make the best decision going forward. Okay, and then I also talked about this a bit. The first correction may be an overcorrection, because the first time you're doing something, you're not going to really know how to do it. You're going to do it kind of messy, not so clean, but just do it. Just practice what you want to be. Think long term. And eventually, you'll be better at standing up for yourself, or negotiating for yourself, or arguing for what you want. Like, really ask yourself what you want, and then what do I have to do to get there, and then start doing it. All right, now this is kind of a great way to end. It's something I've been doing recently, is trying to, like, listen to writers write about characters in movies and books, and the psychology of it, as well as the what's going on here, like what are they trying to do. And I think the last thing that I want to close with today, outside of the silly stuff at the end, is this idea of the dark mirror. So basically, in a lot of series and a lot of big either books, television series, or movies, you see two characters. One is the good side, one is the bad side. But for the most part, they have the same qualities, the same strengths, and the same goals. Just one of them has a different way of doing it. So some examples of this are Gandalf and Saruman, which I'm actually not a huge expert on of Lord of the Rings, but I mean, even I can see it. They literally look the same. They have the same build, the same look, the same hair, One of them is bad, one of them is good. One of them is a magician for the good side, one of them is a magician for the bad side. And I know like they both like honestly have good almost character in terms of what they stand for. It's just like one stands for the bad side, one stands for the good side. Another one of this that I do definitely know a lot more is Jon Snow and Ramsay Bolton. Like they both almost kind of look the same. They both have a lot of power. I mean, they're both really good at what they do. Unfortunately, one is torturing people and the other is being a warrior. So actually, interesting enough, Jon Snow is a swordsman, where Ramsay Bolton is more of an archer. And I don't know, like this might be going too deep, but who has better character, archers or swordsmen? And I would say swordsmen probably have better character because they are really up in front fighting for your life. It's like when you box, when you do hand-to-hand combat, like you have a deep respect for your opponent because like you're getting hit, they're getting hit, your life is on the line. I mean, imagine like a swordsman, like one wrong slice and the guy's dead or you're dead. So there's so much respect for what's going on. But as an archer, you're kind of just shooting the back. You're always safe. You're always never worrying about stuff. You're just trying to focus on your art, your creativity, like how precise you can be. So you're not going to develop this level of character for like respect. I don't know if they did that on purpose. I don't even know if this is a thing, but I think this makes a lot of sense to me if you really dive into what's going on here. Now, I'm sure there's a lot of disrespectful swordsmen. There's a lot of respectful archers. But I would say that being a swordsman does encourage good character and respect, and being an archer does not encourage it. It encourages more being precise and being just really good at your craft. And then you see this with the two characters. Like, Jon Snow is all about doing the right thing. Like, literally the purest, best character maybe in all of fiction history, Jon Snow. Where Ramsay Bolton is the exact opposite. He's manipulating people. He's just trying to step over people. He's using people. He's like, he goes out of his way to kind of be a dick, which is kind of a pun on words if you know what he did to Theon Greyjoy. Now, this is the one that's really my favorite, though, is Zuko versus Aang from Avatar: The Last Airbender. I've been watching a lot of Zuko stuff recently, and just the journey that he went through. He really had to find himself, and they basically have the same kind of goals. So Zuko's is like, I need to reclaim my honor. Aang is also kind of, I have to reclaim my honor, because he basically was the Avatar, but then he went away for 100 years because he was scared of the responsibility. So they're both kind of doing the same thing. And then Zuko had this literally this fiery past where he got burned by his father on a huge stage, and that is why he is so dead set on accomplishing this goal. Whereas Aang is just he's been given this prophecy of like, you need to do this, and that's why he is trying to do. So they both have very big motivation, but one had a rough past where he was almost shamed in front of thousands of people. One has to face his fears and realize his potential. And what's really cool about the story of Zuko is he actually becomes the good version that he is, and he gets a new dark mirror, which is his sister Azula. I feel like my sister, just explaining things way more than I need to about things that I don't know people have interest in. But I'll go ahead and wrap it up real quick. But this, I think, is a good thing that you can see in life, where just because you start, and this goes with the past too, just because you start on one side, if you change, if you grow your circle of influence, if you work hard and really try to attack the flaws that you have, you can go to the other side. And what's going to happen is you're going to see the people who used to be on your side are actually dark mirrors of yourself. Like, I'll say that one more time. So Zuko was the dark side to Aang. And then he had this huge journey. He had this who am I? He had to figure things out himself. He goes back, reunites with his uncle. And then he's on the good side. And then he realizes his sister is actually on the bad side, the dark mirror to him. She manipulates people. She uses people. She lives through fear. And that is kind of her problem. And he can see it now that he's on the other side. Like, hey, I see who you are, what you become, and I don't want to be that. And actually, this is reflected through the final battle between them, where Zuko is actually beating his sister. His sister always was way more talented, a better firebender, but he could actually, he through his journey, he became better. And then what she does is she attacks
his friend, and he uses his new abilities to sacrifice himself to stop her from hurting his friend, which is the huge symbolic sign of the growth of the character, where after he got what he wanted, he used it to sacrifice it to help someone as opposed to hurt someone, because that's how he started out, and that's what the original version of himself would have done. He does get a happy ending. I don't know if I want to spoil it for you guys, but he doesn't die from this, and then they catch his sister, and I'm sure if there was another thing, she would have kids, and they would become the antagonists or whatever. Okay, so that's pretty much it for the podcast. Last thing I wanted to say are, please put your oranges in the fridge. They just taste better that way. Sometimes they get too firm, but they do taste better that way. And lastly, there's this song, Molly by Lil Dicky. Really sweet song, really sad song. But in the beginning of the scene of the music video, so two things actually. In the beginning of the music video, he's at the wedding of his ex-girlfriend that he still kind of has feelings for, and it shows in the beginning like he's with a group of his friends getting ready for like the wedding day, and his friends are literally being dicks. They're like, something, I can't. Are you ready? You gonna cry, man? You good, man? And like, if I was there, I wish I was there, and I'd be like, yo, what's wrong with you guys? Like, this is a big day for her. It's a big day for him. Like, let him live. I can't even imagine how hard it is to go to your ex's wedding, and you guys are gonna make fun of him. Like, leave him alone. Like, that's what I would say if I were there. Second thing is, why are you going to your ex-girlfriend's wedding? Like, especially if you're like, y'all aren't talking anymore and stuff. You're gonna torture yourself, man. Like, you better be promised, like, all right, this girl's gonna be there and she's gonna be with you. Like, he went single to her wedding and he left single. It was the saddest thing ever. I don't know. I'm not. I mean, people do what you want, but I would never torture myself like that. Like, just move on with life. Let go of the past. What a beautiful way to tie this in. I think really the tie-ins were, once again, theme of the day, superpowers. Like, I don't make this stuff up. It just happens. But definitely great way. Let go of the past and just move forward. Enjoy life. Grow your circle of influence and diminish your circle of concern. So this is the MasterofOne podcast. The book of the day, or the book of the week, was Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. I 100% recommend. If you have any questions or want me to talk about anything on the podcast, please message me on Instagram at DAARON.3 or email me at DEEPAKA34@gmail.com. The next book that I'll be covering is 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And that's it. Hope you guys are entertained, and I will see you guys later. Peace.